Here we are again, Hornets. Time for our part 3 guided practice of our Ready workbook. So 2 things you need to go ahead and have out. If you don't, you should have out your workbook and have that open on your desk to page 147. And then on top of that, you need out your source book with a new source book entry on sonnets. And if you haven't gotten that finished, if you haven't finished writing that down, you'll have a chance to do that. So before we get started, we're going to see if I can get this to work, because by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to explain what type of illusion this clip is and what is being alluded to. Remember, we have our types of illusion. We are either going to be making a mythological illusion, a biblical illusion, a literary illusion, or a historical illusion. I know we have cultural illusions that are in here too, but we're going to leave those out. So let's see if I can get this clip to play.
He wasn't in his dressing room, so I wrote him a love letter.
Wait a minute. You're telling me, in a fit of jealousy, you wrote your wife a love letter?
That's right. I know it. She was just an innocent victim of circumstance.
I suppose you used the old lipstick on the mirror routine, huh?
Lipstick, yes. Mirror, no. I found a nice, clean piece of paper. Dear Jessica, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000,
Why don't you just leave the letter there?
Obviously, a poem of this power and sensitivity must be read in person, so I went home to wait for her. But the weasels was there waiting for me, so I ran.
All right, so hopefully you will understand the illusion once we get through with this lesson, and you'll be able to explain what it's about at the end. Okay, so first off, let's go over our source book notes on sonnets, which they are a type of lyric poem. And remember, lyric poetry, we deal in those magic R's. We have rhythm and repetition and rhyme. And when we talk about repetition, I'm not just talking about rhyme. I'm also talking about alliteration and assonance and repeating words. Lyric poems also, guys, make sure they express strong emotion and strong feelings, and they normally have a musical sing-song quality to them. Now, a sonnet has 14 lines, no more, no less. And it's usually written in a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables, or unstressed and stressed, which is the iambic pentameter. And hopefully you watched that video on Monday that dealt with, or the other day, on the different types of different Shakespearean sonnets and iambic pentameter. If you didn't, you need to go back and check that out on Monday's slideshow. They also have that very strict rhyme scheme. There are 3 different popular types of sonnets. You have the Italian sonnet, you have the Elizabethan, or the English sonnet, and the Elizabethan sonnet. And then you also have William Shakespeare made up his own sonnet. He didn't like either of those, so he decided to go with one of his own. And his rhyme schemes for his are A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and G, G for his last 2 lines. And he uses, and that GG remembers what's called a couplet. When you put the pair of lines in their words rhyme. We just did that yesterday with the Barded Owl, that the entire poem was written in couplets. Okay, so let's move on to our actual lesson on page 147. And please keep in mind that if I start going too fast for you, you may pause me at any given time and catch up. I promise it's not going to hurt my feelings. All right, so the very first thing that we're going to do is, you got it. We're going to write the title of our lesson at the top of our page to make sure that we're remembering what our focus is for today. And we are analyzing the structure of a poem. And when I say analyze, once again, I'm talking about we're going to break something down or break it apart. When I say the structure of a poem, I am talking about how the poem is built. So, and right now, today's focus is on looking at how a poem's built versus free verse, or does it have a rhyme scheme? And from our notes from the other day, we learned that free verse means that there is no rhyme. If it does happen to rhyme, it's not intentional. And that a rhyme scheme a poet usually puts in intentionally to help build the flow of how the poem is going to be read. There are other types of structure that we'll look at tomorrow, and that's when we deal with concrete poems, which are written to look a certain way to help the reader understand a deeper meaning of the poem. Speaking of poems are still part of our world of literature, but poems are not like a prose, like a text that we've been typically reading that have chapters and have paragraphs. Poems have lines and stanzas instead. Okay, now with all that being said, we're actually going to look at our genre, which is sonnets. And if you also look at our genre, and it also, if you're in our close reading, it gives us, once again, what a sonnet is. And it is a lyric poem. Once again, it's got those 3 R's: rhyme, repetition, rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. And inside repetition, we deal with alliteration, assonance, and also, once again, rhyme and repeated words. That's part of repetition. And a sonnet has a particular rhyme scheme. It goes in a certain order, and it also consists of 14 lines, no more nor less. So we're going to make sure as we read, we underline the phrase that is repeated throughout the poem. And I'm going to give you a hint. It's repeated 9 times. Okay. With that being said, let's read our directions. And it says we're going to read a poem. Then we're going to use the close reading, which we just went over that. So now we're going to look at the very first thing we do is we're going to box the title of our poem, which is How Do I Love Thee? Now, it is asking us a question. And by asking us, the poet is stating a question. Hopefully within the poem, the speaker is going to answer this question. So, how do I love thee? Now, we're looking at structure to see how it's building unity within the whole poem itself and connecting ideas. So we're going to go through and, oh, wait, I forgot to do something. We're going to number our lines. They're already numbered for us. We have 14 lines, and then we number our stanzas, and we have 1 giant stanza. Okay. Now we're going to zoom this in, and, oh, nope, I forgot something else. By the time we end this, you should be able to tell me if this is organized with a rhyme scheme or free verse for its structure. And then you should also be able to tell me who the poet is. By the way, it's Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who the speaker is that's going to answer this question in the title, and then what my overall tone of the poem is going to be. All right, now I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to take a look to see if it has that rhyme scheme that it's claiming since the sonnet is going to have. So let's go ahead and underline, because all of our external words at the end of each line, because we're looking to check out the external rhyme scheme, not the internal. Internal's inside the line. All right. So we have ways, height, sight, grace, grazes. I'm saying it weird because my Southern accent is not going to do this particular poem justice. And I'm going to let you know that the poet's intention was for grace to rhyme with ways and to rhyme with, just keep that in mind, and to rhyme with praise. Right. So grace, every days, light, right, praise, use, faith, lose, breath, choose, and death. Keep in mind just some text features that you notice. You should notice that the word being that's in the middle, being is typically a common noun, but here it's being used as a proper noun. And also grace here is being used as a proper noun. So it is talking about something religious or spiritual in nature because of the way that they're put in and they're connected. We also come down here for the word praise. And then we've got the word God. And since we have these 2 that are also capitalized, it's reminding us that it's dealing with something that is religious or spiritual in nature as well. And then we also have the word right. I look at this as a more moral thing, that it's giving it a name, moral or justice, to go along with that religious or spiritual feature that we can see. Okay, now with that being said, let's look at our rhyme scheme. Have you had time to figure it out while Miss Murray was doing all this chatting? And let's see, did you get it right? Yay! Your rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. Now, I have over the years, I've had different people couple this together, that CD goes together, CD goes together, and CD goes together. I've seen it also where people put the CDC as one and then the DCD is another. I'm just going to include it all, and I'll tell you why once we break down and we read the poem. Okay. So as we read the poem, you need to make sure that you are going to be underlining the repeated phrase 9 times. Okay, it is repeated in there, and because remember, repetition means it's important. It's trying to get stuck in your head and drive home the fact that something is important. And it also, once again, is the more something repeats, the more it unifies the ideas from the top of the poem to the bottom of the poem. All right, so Miss Murray's gonna read this, and I'm gonna once again apologize in case I butcher anything because, yeah. So, How Do I Love Thee by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight. For the ends of being an ideal grace, I love thee to the level of everyday's most quiet need by sun and candle light. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as thy turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with the love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. End scene. Okay. So we just been, and some of you are going, Miss Murray, this makes no sense. I don't get it because we don't speak this kind of formal, elevated language every day. So let's break it down and look at our first two. Those are called quatrains when they're in groups of 4 like that. Groups of 2, couplets. This the way that they're grouped for right now. For as far as structure is in quatrains. Quatra meaning 4. Those prefixes and suffixes don't go anywhere. All right, now in these first 8 lines of our poem, our speaker is explaining how his or her love is endless and faithful, and I'm going to and obsessive, just a little bit. All right, and that's all it is. It's comparing love to all of these everyday things that we take for granted, whether I can see them, whether I cannot see them, comparing it to my love or the speaker's love for their religious and spiritual needs, and how sun and light, things we need, and for trying to be good and moral. And even if you turn from all of the things you think are great, the speaker still loves that person. So that is an amazing, like, huge type of love. And then you get the last 6 lines, which go over the kind of passion and unending and undying part that the love is going to have. And even from childhood with their old griefs and faith all the way till when they die, this love is never going to stop. It's going to just keep going and going and going all the way until death, when they get to hopefully see each other again in heaven. So this kind of love, so when we hit that last part, that's why we're dealing with how even in death, the love will keep going in heaven. All right, so I'm going to zoom this out a little bit so we can take a look at what happens when we put these 2 stanzas together and what this actually means for our speaker, and answering that question of how do I love thee? Well, oh wait, how many times did you let's see, what line did you underline over and over again? Good job. It is how I love thee. It's 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we even start with, and I left one out, 9. Okay. All right. So hopefully you have all of yours, because that repetition is unifying it from the first line saying, how do I love thee? Giving me a list of all the different ways that they love someone, to the end with, once again, ending it with that I still love thee, but I still love thee better after death. So the speaker is listing all the ways that he or she loves someone, and uses religious imagery to compare true love to spiritual faith, since death cannot even stop it. Okay, now that's a complex sentence, by the way. Yay. Not compound, because there's no comma after someone, because I did not start a second independent clause. All right, now this right here, let's get to this. Okay, so we reread the poem and explain how the poet uses repetition to express the speaker's feelings. Before we do that, let's zero in on something real quick. My poet is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Oh, well, I did it again. So my poet is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. My speaker is a person explaining how they love someone, answering that question, how I love thee. And my tone that I give for this is it's positive because they are talking about their truest and most faithful feelings. I also though give it a little bit addictive. It can hit negative because it's also talking about how all ensuing and how just all powerful love is and how it can consume you with that passion as well. So in just a second I'll click that and you'll be able to see that. So we're going to explain how the poet uses repetition to express the speaker's feelings. Hopefully, instead of saying, when you rewrite this sentence, you don't say the poet has used, you tell me Elizabeth Barrett Browning has used repetition to express the speaker's feelings by emphasizing the ways in which the speaker expresses his or her love. It's very similar to what we already wrote at the top of our page. So now we're going to then look at our showing our thinking to give further explanation to what we just said. We want to give a citation of evidence from the poem to explain how the poem structure helps you understand the speaker's feelings. And that's why we underlined that repetitive part of the poem, because that's what I'm going to use for my citation. Is I'm going to pull that and I'm going to make sure I mention that it's used 9 times and that it also helps drive home the fact that the speaker really loves this person. So there we go. Browning repeats the phrase, I love thee, a total of 9 times in the poem. By repeating this phrase so often and then describing specific ways, the poet helps readers understand the nature and extent of the speaker's love. Okay, so also there we go. There's our Elizabeth Barrett Browning is the speaker person. The speaker is a person expressing love, and our tone is positive, it's faithful, and it's trusting. I mean, it's mentioning true love. It's true. But I'm going to add that little bit of that whole a bit addictive and obsessive part to give it a little bit of a negative twist. Okay. Now, I'm going to move on to my next screen. You don't have this, and that's okay. But I want you to see sonnets compared. Okay. We have Elizabeth Barrett Browning sonnet that we just did, and we looked at her rhyme scheme. And now I'm going to look at William Shakespeare's Sonnet 18 that starts with a question as well. So we're going to box our title, and it is Sonnet 18. And we're going to go through and I'm going to read this. And then while I'm reading this, I want you to see if you can figure out the rhyme scheme. Notice his first line of his fourth, and it's also numbered with 14 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And it is in one giant stanza. Okay. And as I read this, you need to go ahead and see if you can figure out what his rhyme scheme is and double check from our notes that we took in our source book on sonnets and make sure that he sticks to his plan. He also starts his first line with a question. So I'm assuming that by the time we get to the end of this poem, he's going to have answered that question. The speaker is going to have answered that question. Okay. Now remember, our poet is William Shakespeare. And our speaker is going to be the one answering, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? All right. Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leash hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall never fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. And all right, so real quick before we look at our rhyme scheme, I know y'all are going, once again, Miss Murray, we do not talk like this. What does this mean? We do not speak as he did in the end of the 1500s and the end of the 1600s, so long ago, with this kind of elevated formal language. And that's fine. But and extra credit if you can actually tell me about the I'll give you extra bonus points on Friday's quiz if you can tell me and explain his iambic pentameter and his unstressed and stressed lines. Okay, but that's not what I'm going to go over for this today. All right, that's 8th grade standard. So now when it comes to this, all he's saying is by the time we get to the end is that he's going over, he's comparing him to the summer's day, that this person is beautiful, that the darling buds of May, that summer too short a date because we have long days in the summer, but sometimes it's too hot, that this person is so beautiful that they shine so brightly it's even hard to look at them, and that even as time goes by and your beauty might start declining over time, your eternal always summer shall never fade, because as long as someone can read this, they will know how beautiful that you were. So the speaker is saying that even though you are beautiful now and as beautiful and as wonderful as a summer day, by the time you end up growing older, you will still be beautiful because I've immortalized your beauty in these words. So let's see if we got our rhyme scheme right. And because the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, and G, G, and he ends with those couplets. And it's different from Browning's sonnet. Okay. And I wanted you to see that the couplets, that his quatrains are completely different and different connected through the GG. So we will look at this a little bit more. And I love how Shakespeare does his couplets at the bottom, because it kind of like gives a closing. He opens his sonnet with a question and gives it a closing, like right there, like a final piece. So if you have any questions, we are going to be looking at another poem from in class. We're going to be looking at another poem from Langston Hughes for Dreams, and we're going to break down its rhyme scheme as a class, in a minute on your own, and also look at its, it has a simile or two in it, and look at the repetition and things in that. So I hope y'all enjoyed this and looking at poetry, and I would love to see if you can find another sonnet that deals with love unending because of what our poets have put in here and what the speakers got. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.